see a lot of faces that I know. For anyone that I don't know, I hope you guys will come up and introduce yourself afterwards. I'd love the chance to get to meet you guys. And I definitely want to thank Yago, Dave, Joe, and a lot of the other people at PGI behind the scenes, girls that you guys know like Tori and Courtney and Kelly, if you guys have emailed us, and Stephen, who was emailing me at 11 o'clock last night to make all this happen. So it's a lot of work to be able to do this. And then to think about the fact that they do this for you guys for free is extra exciting. And the fact that you don't have to go anywhere. I think if we counted the number of times people like Jeff or Dan or myself or Yago or Dave went to Las Vegas in the past year, it's probably over 50 times in total. I think we could own a house there. So the fact that you guys get all this information, get it right here, I think is pretty exciting. So Yago was saying that I worked in the car business. That's true. So obviously I've been to some training events like this. And I always wondered, how does the person end up on stage? And really the way that happens is they send out an email and say, we need somebody to speak, and then no one responds. And then they say, hey Nick, you're speaking. So if you ever want to know like how you get up here, just don't respond to an email asking you to speak. You'll definitely get the opportunity. And I also wondered, like, what do the people do on the day-to-day basis when they are not up on stage? And for a lot of you guys, you know, I'm going to walk you through some of the things that I do with the customers of ours that are here on a monthly basis when we look at their analytics and then look at some of the other tools that are available that you guys can take advantage of. So to tell you a little bit about myself, I did grow up in the business. I'm a UHD. My uncle has a dealership. So my dad works there as a fixed ops director and as a minority partner. My cousins work there, my sister worked there, and as a kid, I painted the curbs out front, I painted the light posts yellow so nobody would run into them, I detailed cars, I sold cars. I went away to college at a place called Northwood University and got a degree in automotive marketing and management, which definitely proves you can get a degree in anything. And after that, I went to Metro Detroit and I worked as a sales manager, as a finance manager. And I realized I didn't really want to live in Michigan anymore. And when you work in the car business, you oftentimes have an opportunity to make good money. And I was trying to replace that income. So I went back to school, I got a master's degree, which is pretty difficult for somebody that grows up in the car business where you do everything based on gut feel. And then you go away to school until you need actual evidence and data to support anything that you're going to say. You can't just make it up like you can inside of a dealership. So a little bit of an adjustment there. I moved to Seattle after I graduated. That was 4 years ago. I started a company called CarCodeMe that makes mobile applications for salespeople. And for the last year and a half, I've been consulting with dealers for PGI. And I've had a lot of opportunity to spend time with dealers, look inside of their analytics, go away to training classes, and then wrap all of those things up and bring it back and share some of that stuff with you guys. So that's what I'm hoping to do today. I would have two problems when I went to seminars like this. First thing that I would see is the person who was up on stage would be talking about something that didn't necessarily apply to me. It was futuristic. And it's good, you go, you want to learn something new, but they're talking about something that's coming in 2015. It's not something I have to take any action on as an employee at a dealership. Or the second thing is, I just don't have the ability to implement it myself. So a guy says, I got this really good idea, isn't for 2015, it's for right now, I buy in, and then it's like, I don't know exactly how to get this project started. And I tried really hard to make it so that you guys would be able to implement these things on your own, totally independent of us. And so I did that in a couple of ways. All the slides have all the instructions on how to actually get to the reports. There's a search box in Google Analytics where you can type in like keywords. I wrote the keywords that you guys have to type if you want to find this report for your own dealership. And I also put together an email that has some really great resources that I used and reference inside of here. So if you guys send an email to seminar@PGI Auto, you'll get a copy of the presentation, but you also get a lot of other resources that I'm going to reference throughout here that you guys will be able to use when you get back to the store, so you won't necessarily need us if you don't want to. So to kind of talk about the topic itself, big data. First of all, it just sounds really cool. As you look up the definition, big data is not really a thing. It just means more data than you had before. So when they apply this word big in front of it, you hear it on the news, essentially it's just saying data that maybe is more data than we had in the past. We need a new way to either be able to capture it, to be able to store it, to be able to analyze it, to be able to visualize it. But it's no different than any data that we had already. And really the goal for us with any data is to be able to look at it and say, is there some useful trend here? Is there some piece of information that I can glean from this that my competitor doesn't have that I can leverage and then ultimately sell more cars. And there's a lot of examples of this, obviously, outside of the car business. I think about companies like Amazon that have risen to the top of their field almost exclusively based on how well they analyze data, how quickly they can A/B test things, figure out what customers are looking for, make good recommendations. If you think about a company like Facebook, how good they are at reselling your data to people to be able to do specific advertisements and say like, hey, this guy appears to be in his 30s, he really likes skiing, all his photos are about skiing, why don't you serve him up an ad about skiing that's contextual? I think Brian Pash will probably talk to you guys about this later today, but there's definitely examples of people that are using data and things that we can do inside of the dealership to do this. Now, I actually don't really believe the term big data applies to dealers in this respect. In researching this, I was reading about Walmart and how they analyze data. And they have millions of transactions that happen every minute around the globe at the cash register. And they use this to be able to figure out what do I need to supply, or what do I need to talk to my suppliers about to be able to order for inventory on a real-time basis, because I can see all these sales all around the globe happening in real time. Well, at a dealership, even a big store, if we sell 500 cars or 700 cars, that's not millions of cars that we need to reorder. So there's not things that we necessarily need to worry about. I think this is probably a buzzword that we're hearing a lot in the industry, but there's definitely data that people are aggregating that is big data that we can use, harness, and then try and use to our advantage. And I want to go into some of those things. And more than that, I want to give you guys some specific tools that you'll have access to so that when Dave gets up and starts talking about conversion and says, hey, you need to increase your conversion, or here are some ways that you can, that you got a baseline set up where you know how to measure it yourself as you embark on it. Or if Yago talks to you about building new content, that you'll have access to some tools that allow you to build content that people are actually going to be able to find, that Google's going to be able to index, and that you're going to be able to put your efforts in the most fruitful place. So that's really the goal there. And then just to tell you kind of the arc of this, I'd like to talk about capturing the data, and I see that as a downfall with a lot of dealerships where they're trying to make some kind of a decision, and then we go and look, and for whatever reason, through some holes in the reporting or a bad process of how they capture it, they don't actually have it. So first we got to be able to capture the information, then we got to be able to put it into some kind of a format where we can establish a trend and look for something that's useful or interesting, and then we can go from there. So there's a few parts of this that I'm going to dig into that are a little bit deeper, and you'll have to bear with me, but that's kind of part of learning, is I'll show you some of these reports. So some of the tools that we're going to use today, you're going to need a website that has dashboard level reporting. We're going to talk about that, Google Analytics, call tracking with dynamic phone numbers. How many people are using a dynamic phone number right now on their website? A couple of people. And Webmaster Tools, Moz is a company based here in Bellevue. Super powerful SEO company I recommend you guys look at. Open Site Explorer is a product that they make. And then AdWords. How many guys are using AdWords right now? Okay, about a third of you guys, if you can't see. So, capturing the data. The first thing that we have to do is be able to instrument our website. And one of the ways to really know if we're instrumenting our website properly is to put together a spreadsheet that forces us to say, do I know the answers to these questions? Because this is going to be the fundamental that you need to work on your conversion. And so I've attached this spreadsheet. It's also in the email. If you guys send it, you'll be able to get a real copy of this, not just a screenshot. But I'll walk you through this way. You can see things like total traffic and unique visits. And then we break down things like how many people came from pay-per-click, how many were referral visits to our website, how many came organically, how many people came direct. And then we look at all these individual departments on our website and say, how many people came from sales, and how many people came from finance, and how many people came from parts. And I can't tell you the number of times that if you ask the dealer this, they might say that they know the answer, and then when you hand them the spreadsheet and say, okay, fill this out for the last 12 months so we can look at this together, they don't really have the ability to do that. And that's okay, but you should start establishing some good practices now and say, I'm going to use something like this going forward so I have a trend. And you'll see things like, how come I don't know how many service leads I have? Oh, well, I use X time on my website, and so all of the service appointments that I get are scheduled outside of my website. Well, that's okay. X time's a great product, but make sure you know where to get that information so that you can go back and fill something like this in so you're getting a complete picture of what's happening on the site. So after form leads, we have phone calls. If you add up your phone calls and your form leads together and you divide the number of leads that you have by the unique visitors that come to your site, you get your conversion rate, and this spreadsheet will do that for you. And so you guys will be able to enter this information and start tracking it on your end, so when Dave talks to you about ways that you can make it better, you've at least got a baseline to go off of. Some other ones that are pretty useful to look at that are a little bit more in-depth that you might want to be looking at on a monthly basis. Visitors per search engine. The reason why I like this search, or this report, if I see a drop-off in my traffic, and I say, hey, I was getting 10,000 people, now I seem to be getting 9, is it because less people are coming from Google? Is it because less people are coming from Yahoo? Is it because I pulled out of the ad? Well, we can see if I lose equal traffic from all of my search engines at the same time, it's probably some other factor. If I see that I used to get a ton of traffic from Bing and now I don't get any, you might be able to say, hey, I don't think Bing is indexing my site, or maybe I got a penalty, I need to look at this. So looking specifically at where we're getting traffic from gives us a little bit more insight. The next one here, visitors by phrase. If we talk about what words people are using to find your site, we're going to look at that in depth. You might find that some of them are more powerful than others, and you might find that while some phrases bring people to your website, they don't actually end up in you getting any additional leads. So you're going to want to see which phrases actually convert better. So we talk about dashboard reporting, or form level reporting. One of the things that I was lucky enough to be a part of over the course of the last year is this button called ePrice. And the guy who thought of the phrase ePrice is in the room today, Dave Page, but he didn't start with the term ePrice. He had internet price and sale price and special price. And then he tested those against lots and lots of visitors on people's website and found out in the end, based on the page layout that we have, based on the colors that we have, that term ePrice is a really powerful lead generator for dealers. Then I would see dealers who we didn't necessarily consult with say, hey, I see a lot of people use the ePrice, I want to apply this to my own website. So they would take the idea, that's good, I steal people's ideas all the time. But if you don't have something like this that allows you to see what's working and what's not working on your website, and you're just looking at other people, you're going to find these big holes. We're going to talk about customer segmentation today, segmenting your traffic. So here's a call to action, confirm availability, we've talked a lot about. And on this particular dealer, for new, it wasn't effective at all. No people. The reason why I point that out is not to say it's not a bad call to action. For some people, it's their number one. But if you're not able to look between your new and your used and look at the calls to action and things that are working, you don't really have the data that you need to be able to make good decisions. So the first thing that you guys are going to need, beyond setting up something like the Google Analytics, is access to the back end of your website and have a website that's going to allow you to process this type of information and this level of detail. So that's the first thing that I'll say that you guys need. And then I told you guys throughout this that I would try and give you some action items that you guys would be able to implement back at your store right away. So I list these all throughout today. Get the proper instrument set up to record the data. Send an email to seminar@PGI Auto. Get the bounce back. You'll get a copy of that spreadsheet. You can start putting the data into a useful format. Like I said, it's good for two reasons. One, because it forces you to actually go and get the information to make sure you know how to get it. And two, instead of having a report over here and a report over here and a report over here, I can see everything all in line and actually see if there's a drop off or not. So, Google Analytics is obviously a big one. I apologize, we're going to go through a lot of reports here. One of the things that I see when I look at people's Google Analytics is, or have discussions with them, it's just this discussion about time on site, pages per visit, and bounce rate. And those are really trailing indicators of something else. So if I have a high bounce rate, there might be a reason why strategically, there might be a problem with my homepage, it might be the way that I'm getting traffic, but a lot of people just say, hey, I have this bounce rate, but they don't know where to actually go inside of Google Analytics and figure out what are the things that make up my bounce rate and how do I start to analyze that. So that's one of the first reports I'm going to show you guys. So this is going to show you the most viewed pages on your website, this report. You can get there through typing into that box, content, site content, all pages. So as you look at this report, there's a few things I want to show you. The first thing that you'll see, the home page is the most viewed page on the site. And then this guy's used car inventory and new car inventory, and on and on and on that way. Well, if I look at the guy's home page and I follow this across, the bounce rate for his home page is 18%. But the bounce rate for the site is 40%. Now that's a big difference. The reason why I point that out is you guys might look at that and say, oh God, I got a 40% bounce rate, I need to fire my website vendor, or I need to make some action, or I need to optimize my home page to make this more attractive or easier to convert. I need a heat map. I need to do something. Let's change where this box is. But you don't look a little bit deeper. You don't know how to look a little bit deeper and say, what's driving this bounce rate? And that's really the critical thing to look at here. And so when I look at this report, and I recommend that you guys do on a monthly basis, that you would say, here's the top few pages. Here's the bounce rate of the home page, so it's not there. Now let's look down this column and find other pages that get a lot of traffic but have a high bounce rate. Ah, here we go. So this page, /instant quote, and I don't know what dealer this is or who it is, I use a lot of different examples. But this instant quote page, for whatever reason, has a 76% bounce rate, and a lot of traffic is going to it. So that's going to raise the bounce rate for the site. But if you go to the instant quote page and you're getting a ton of leads, where it's a framed-in page where you would expect that it's going to show to Google as a bounce, but the person isn't really bouncing, they're actually just filling out your contact information, don't say, I need to rechange my homepage or redo this strategy or fire my vendor because my bounce rate is 40%. I don't care about your bounce rate. If you're getting a ton of leads from this page, this is allowing you guys to dig one step deeper, use the information, and not just be making changes, but try and find things that are actually going to be valuable for you guys to work on. So a great report to look at on a monthly basis. One of the things that drives that report, these are called breadcrumbs or sometimes site link extensions. You'll see this. You don't get to pick these. So Google says, hey, we're going to try and make this easier for the person. When I analyze the traffic that goes to this website, lots of people want to go to the parts page and meet staff page. But it does make sense that some of these would be the highest viewed pages on your site because they're a shortcut inside of it. You can ask Google to demote some of these. So if you get one up here, since you don't pick these, they give them to you. But if you say, like, I don't really want meet the staff, you can say, don't show meet the staff. You might get something else, you might not. But if you look at yours and you say, hey, I'm getting one that I don't necessarily want to be the front page for whatever reason, or you might look at it and say, I'm not going to change it, but I'm going to change that page, you should kind of see some correlation between these links here and then what are the most viewed things on your site you might want to optimize this.
I have a question. I should probably know the answer to this, but what drives the breadcrumbs? How does that happen?
It's really done by Google. So what they're saying is we're going to try and make search faster for people.
Right.
Lots of times when people go to this website, they just want to go to parts. We're just going to display this underneath. So they're picking like quick links for your site, not you guys as the dealer.
Okay.
And I should say that if you have more questions, please ask them. So thanks, Jen.
How come some dealers would have it and some dealers don't have breadcrumbs?
Either based on the amount of traffic that they have, maybe a dealer asked to have theirs demoted, maybe the site map isn't set up properly where like not everything is getting indexed. But in general, it seems funny to tell you that it's a little bit of a black box for Google. It is Google or Bing that's actually picking those to show to try and make the search experience better. So the next report that I want to take a look at, this is the landing pages. This is how people enter your site. Not everybody enters your site, like we saw back here. Some people enter your site in different places. Sometimes people enter your site in different places because you have direct links set up from ads on Craigslist. Sometimes people enter your site in different places because you have a link from a third party that's sending a lot of traffic to you guys. But what this report is showing you is the number of people who are coming and landing on this page. This is the first thing that they see when they see your website. This is the entrance. And what I like to do is look down and say, one, does this make sense? I'm getting a lot of traffic on these pages. I can tell you, because I look at a lot of different dealers' analytics, that if you look at this regularly, you will find that some of these pages will occasionally go to a 404 error. What happened is somebody gave you a link to your website, then you made a change on your website, not knowing that somebody gave you a link, and that page is broken, but AutoTrader keeps trying to send people to your site, and that page is moved. So it's really valuable each month from an optimization standpoint to look at this information and say, hey, the pages that are getting the most people showing up on my site, do they look good? Do they look like the front door of my website? Knowing that /service department for this particular dealer is the number 3 way that people enter his site, would you do something different? Would you have it go to a welcome message? Would you have it play a video? Would you have it so the person can schedule service very quickly? Or might it be a picture of like a guy named Bill with a mustache and like an oil change shirt, and you're like, I don't know if that's what I want as the first thing people see when they get to my website. So looking at these pages allows you to kind of optimize that. And I also like to look at the next one, which is kind of logical here, exit pages. So this is going to show you what are the last things that people see on your website. And there's 2 reasons why I like to look at this. One, If you know that this is the last page that somebody's going to see, I try and say, does it make sense? Like, contact us. I would expect that to be one of the last pages. Meet staff, hours and directions. I think that that's things that logically make sense to me that somebody is leaving. If I saw a page that I said, I don't really like the way this looks, or this doesn't feel right to me, I might go to that page and make sure it's working properly, what is the message on it. But beyond that, I told you I grew up in the car business. We did a TO with every customer. So hours and direction. That's a customer in the digital world. He's coming to your website, he's thinking about coming to your dealership. I work with dealers who are on the east side, and I think, why wouldn't you have something like, here's video directions about how to get to my store if it's difficult to find. Or give the person 3 last reasons to contact you guys today versus waiting and finding somebody else. Or do you guys reimburse the tolls? I know some dealers reimburse the tolls, but it's not on their website, so you can list that. Or something like, we know that you're busy, we'll bring the car to you. You want to test drive a car, you're trying to figure out when we're open, we'll bring the car to you. A lot of people do that, but don't announce that to their customers. This is a place that you guys can do that and work on trying to get some more action out of those particular pages. So this one is a report a lot of people have looked at. I want to just give you a little bit different spin on how I look at it and why I look at it. This is referrals. So a great place to be able to go and figure out things like who's sending people to my website. And there's some interesting reasons to do this. One, you're probably spending money with these people. So if you're spending money on Craigslist, like this dealer obviously is, or posting cars on Craigslist, you can see he gets about 1,000 visitors to show up on his website. And I don't know what they spend. Let's say they spend $1,000 on Craigslist. And I can see Auto Trader here sent 67 people. I bet that the person doesn't spend $1,000 on Auto Trader. They probably spend $4,000 or $5,000, like most of us have. And so what I like to look at is say, okay, Jen came around from Toyota and said, I did this study with Auto Trader and Google, and 7 out of 10 people who come to my dealership don't submit a lead beforehand. I totally believe it. But the people also have to have had some awareness to you or seen your website. And what we're trying to figure out is how many people maybe came to my website but didn't necessarily submit a lead or didn't necessarily call, but did show up as a customer. And so this is a great source to be able to go do that and then track other things like this campaign.response logic. I don't know exactly what this is. I'll tell you one that I see all the time for dealers though is a newsletter. There's a dealer that's actually in this room that sends out a newsletter every month. They get a ton of referral traffic to their website. I think the newsletter program costs them $100 a month. So if you look at what does it take to get people to my website, you might be able to retarget to that person. There's some things that you guys can do to market your own customers and then track how well these individual things are working. Or even things like, another dealer that we work with started getting a ton of referral traffic from this website like Retail Me Not, or some sort of like a coupon or bargain website, was the #1 referral to their website. I said, like, do you advertise with this person? How do you get so many people to show up on your website from this coupon website? And I said, actually, what happened is we have a $25 gift card if you come in and take a test drive, and somebody posted it on this national website, so I got all these people from all around the country trying to get my free $25, but they live in California, they're not going to come in for the test drive. So it was just an anomaly in their data, but it allows you to be able to look at this and say, like, hey, maybe I need to try and get that link off of there if I don't want to have this. So it works both directions. Sometimes what we're spending and being able to track our ROI, and then sometimes just see who's sending traffic to us. The next one here, these are the keywords that people use to find your site. And we're going to look at this and use an example from here quite a bit. I'm going to take a drink of water and I'll tell you about this. So this report, everyone is familiar with. This is the words that people use to find your website. The name of this dealership is Matt Sachs Chevrolet. He's in Minnesota. So, not provided. A lot of people have seen this. I'll just tell you, if you have a Gmail account or a Google account and you are logged in, like you see your name in the upper right-hand corner, the things that you search for, Google won't show customers, or won't show their own analytics team. So, anything not provided just means that a person was logged into Google and they're not sharing the information. So when you guys see that in your own accounts, that's what that comes from. There's not anything that we can really do about that. But then we look at the words that people are using. Since this guy's name is Matt Sachs Chevy, you're going to see, and just like you'll see in your own analytics, the dealership's name. Matt Sachs Chevrolet, Sachs Chevy, Matt Sachs, Sachs Chevrolet. All variations of this particular dealer's name. That's very common. But there's one here that is very interesting. C7 Corvette for sale. Now, who thinks that if you could show up for that, that doesn't say Seattle or Minneapolis, just C7 Corvette for sale. It's a pretty broad search. Who thinks they could make money if they indexed for a search like this? I bet the first guy that you sell a C7 Corvette to, you're going to make some money on. So this has got a lot of power behind it. There's a lot of examples like this with our own brands. But beyond this, there's another report that I'm going to show you guys how to find, which is non-branded searches. So you're going to see tons of people that are showing up because they know your name, because you've been in the community, because you built a baseball stadium, because you advertise on the radio. But what about people that are finding your website who have never heard of you? So I switched dealers. This is a dealership named Greg Bell. And you can find this report. I got the instructions here so you can do it yourself. And what it does is it takes away a particular keyword. So I said, let's get rid of the term Greg, since that's the dealer's name, and then see what shows up. So now instead of Greg Bell Chevrolet being number one, you can see the town that he's located in is Adrian. So Adrian dealerships. Never heard of you, don't know who you are, I'm just looking for a dealership in this town. Car dealerships in Adrian. Chevy dealer Adrian. The reason why I like to look at something like this is say, here's how people are finding me, ending up on my website that don't know who I am. Is there something that I can do to capitalize on this and reinforce it so that I'm not just getting people that already know who I am on my website, but people that have never found me before are able to show up. This is a little bit different report, and I'll kind of show you the difference between the two. So this is in Google Analytics. What this is allowing you to do is get some data on people who didn't know your name, but came to your website. Slightly different. Another great tool, this is in Google Webmaster Tools. This is going to show you searches that you came up for, but the person didn't necessarily land on your site. So the first one, I had to see the word, click on it, and get there. Here, you showed, but for whatever reason, the person didn't come. They didn't click. So you might look at some of those searches and say, do I index too low? Can I work on that? Or is there something about the way my web page is displaying, like I don't see any valuable text underneath of the link. It looks like a broken link, and so the person doesn't click on it. Or the keywords don't necessarily match up with the URL structure. So just another place that you can go and get some more in-depth information, especially for things that you're missing, kind of unknown data. This is really worth doing. Well, we're going to talk a lot about this C7 as an example, and this is done by this company, Moz, showing you the number of searches. I'll consult with dealers and they'll say, like, I want to show up number one for Toyota Corolla. Well, that's good. I would want to also. It's going to be challenging, and I'll show you some of that. But there's all these variations of Toyota Corolla that people might search for, like Toyota Corolla for sale, or Toyota Corolla best price, or Toyota Corolla Seattle. And all those things in the aggregate make up way more searches in total than these fathead kind of broad keywords like F-150. F-150 Seattle, there's actually way more people searching, and that amount is growing. What's cool about this is two things. It allows us to show up in searches we couldn't ordinarily show up for, and I'm going to show you that in a little bit. But also, it allows us to match up the customer's intent with the content. So I'll give you an example, kind of not car business related. If you could show up for bed bugs, that would be pretty good. That's a broad term. Or you might show up for bed bug removal Seattle. Well, you might get more traffic if you show up for bed bugs, but you might get a lot of people who are looking for information for a school report, or the history of bed bugs, or the Wikipedia page. But if somebody types in bed bug removal Seattle, I bet that you're going to convert better because you've matched up the customer's intent closer to what you're actually going to deliver on the page. So there's a lot of value in these long tail searches, and there's a lot of space to be able to play. And I think Yago's going to talk a lot about that today, but it's definitely something worth pursuing. And I'm going to show you where you can go and get some information to be able to, when you start on that process, like I want to build some content, build content that people are actually going to be able to use and find, versus just saying, like, I think people are really going to want to find this. So some more action items. Link your AdWords and your analytics account to develop a keyword list. If you guys that are doing PPC, you're going to want the data from both. Comparing the expense of your referral traffic is definitely a good one. Optimizing your front door and your back door of your website. And then searching for pages that have a high bounce rate, see if there's an error or a reason why they have that. Some things that you guys can do, set up as a process, just do each month. So, can we predict the future? There's some other cool tools, and that's really what I want to show you, things that you guys can use to leverage yourself. So, This is a search for C6 Corvette. This is using a product called Google Trends. And it shows you the incidence of searches over time on the internet. And you can see 2005, just a ton of people are searching for a C6 Corvette. And as time goes on, very few people are looking for a C6 Corvette. 2013, almost nobody. But in 2005, no one was searching for a C7 Corvette. And in 2013, it's almost off the chart. So we can use tools like this and try and find things that we think people are going to be searching for. I can tell you right now that if you have a Honda dealership, showing up for the search 2013 Honda Odyssey is a really good search. However, pretty soon, that search isn't going to have a lot of value, and you're going to want to be trying to figure out how you can show up for 2014 Honda Odyssey. So using a tool like this is just showing you the two over top of each other. Actually, I don't know what this is. Let's find out. Should show you the two over top of each other and allow you guys to kind of make some smart decisions about where you're going to invest your content on. Let's give it an idea. Okay. Certain things are seasonal. So this is showing you what people search for in terms of ski gloves. It's like a perfect sine wave, right? At a certain time of year, people say, I'm thinking about getting some ski gloves. Well, how can I use this on my own website? Let me show you another one that's kind of related to the car business. Here's a search for wiper blades from 2005 to 2013. At a certain time of year, people start thinking about wiper blades. There's no guessing about it. So we know that if you get content out there that's fresh, that's unique, that you get up before other people, that you've got an opportunity to index and capture some of those searches and match up what you're doing and spending time on, because we've got limited time in the dealership, so that it actually matches up with what customers are looking for at a certain time of year. So as you start talking about, hey, I want to build more content and build more assets with Yago, come up with a strategy and go, here's places you can go and find real information about what you should be building. So continuing on this example, we looked at our analytics, we found something interesting in our keywords. It was even in our branded searches, we keep showing up for this C7 Corvette. I think I can make money on this. I've got allocation for Corvettes. I want to have more customers for them. What do I do to kind of reinforce this behavior? And is there more searches that I can show up for? So you can see C7 Corvette Minneapolis. The guy that we were looking at shows up number 1. There's a paid ad here, and then he also shows up number 2. So if you liked that and you wanted to continue on that, where would you go and get more information? Well, this is a free program from AdWords. You don't even have to use PPC. You can just Google this URL. It will allow you to put in certain keywords and then show you different variations. And what's interesting about that is we all think about things differently. So the way that I might say something like SUV and somebody else might say sport utility vehicle are two totally different searches that you need to try and optimize for. And when I look at this, there's some ones that I would never have thought about in my own life to do. I call it a C7. I grew up in the car business. C4, C5, C6, C7. But other people just call it a 2014 Corvette or a Corvette Stingray. Or I don't like convertibles. But people search for Corvette convertible. So there's all these different things like price, one of the number one things. If you got a new model coming out, people want to know how much it costs. So if you're going to try and index for something that's coming out next year, how about news? They're not looking for one for sale yet. They're looking for information. They're looking for a price. So this allows you to not have to be a genius. You can just type it in and Google will tell you what they think other people are looking for based on real data, not what we think. So are there local examples? Yeah, definitely. Here's one. Toyota Corolla Seattle. The number one thing that comes up here is the most visited website for auto traffic, according to Jenna Toyota. Yahoo Autos. And then you see Toyota Seattle coming up below this. Now, it doesn't really make any sense that this website would show up here and Toyota Seattle would show up below it. But that's a signal that we can use to try and generate some content that Google can index to be able to show for a specific search. When it's all done, and Yago will show you this, it might look something like this, where you got your keywords, put a page together, put some actual valuable content like links to your inventory, links to your incentives, photos of the car, or video. A couple tools you're going to be able to need to do with your AdWords data. And then this one here, Moz Rank Tools. Go back. The ranking tools for Moz is really cool and something I recommend you guys use as you start on this and say, I want to be able to show up for a specific search. Where do I show up right now? This will tell you, like, hey, When I search for used cars in Kirkland, you show up number 7. Well, I can't remember that month over month over month, and as I'm working on this is a way that you can hold your vendors accountable. If you're a dealer in the room, you've got somebody on your team that's saying, hey, I'm working on your SEO, I'm optimizing for you. You can actually see over time, do I rank better or worse than I did in the past? So you can see for this particular dealer, they show up number 1 for Infinity JX in Seattle, but for Infinity Service in Bellevue, they're way down the list. And so that's something that they're working on and saying, I want to be better at this particular search. Even if you're not active in building content like you guys should be, you might want to have this just so you can track what you rank for now. And if somebody else is coming after your business, whether another dealer, that's probably not the issue. The problem is all these other places like Yahoo Autos that are stealing traffic from you. To go back to this example, Dodge Ram for sale near Snohomish, a lot of you guys know there's not a Dodge dealer in Snohomish. So it's not like one dealer is trying to screw another dealer. They just want to show up in searches that they know people are searching for. And so rather than having the traffic end up on something like Yahoo Autos, you can build something so they show up on your particular website, and you can track that over time and see if you're getting better or worse, or other people are starting to increment in your searches. So a great tool for you guys to be able to use internally. Some action items here for you. Find some keywords that you want to rank for. Determine your current rank so you can actually establish your trend, whether it's going up or down. Create some content around this, and then start testing it for conversion. Because if I get people that come to my website, but they never leave their contact info, it's like a day where you have a bunch of people in your showroom and you don't sell any cars. It's not very useful. It's frustrating. You want to be able to start testing what messages are actually working. And you also might want to know, like, how hard is this going to be? I was telling you that people always want to show up for things like Toyota Corolla, not Toyota Corolla Seattle. Well, there's some tools that we can use to determine how difficult of a task it's going to be, so that if we start on this venture, we're not going to be wasting our efforts or wasting our time or wasting our money. There's some things that give us signals on the internet of, well, how challenging this task is going to be. So here's 2 different searches, Toyota Corolla, and then this other one, Toyota Corolla Seattle. So the first thing for Seattle is I add this and make a long tail search, Yahoo Autos. If I put in Toyota Corolla, what comes up is toyota.com/Corolla. I can tell you from experience, if you're going to try and displace toyota.com/Toyota or /Corolla, that's going to be nearly impossible. It's not going to happen. So what you need to focus on as a dealer are searches that you can actually win at. And so as I look at this page, this is something that will tell us, this is a tool you guys can use called Open Site Explorer, and it will tell you information about a particular page that is ranking. And then you can see, what does Google think about this page? Is it really valuable content, or they just have to show something? Because when you do a search, they're not going to show nothing, but they're going to show some kind of content. So here, that page, Toyota Corolla Seattle, has a domain authority of 1, or a page authority of 1 out of 100. It's pretty weak. They don't think that it's great content. They just don't have something else to show. Now, if you look at that same domain for Toyota Corolla Seattle, or excuse me, just for Toyota Corolla, it's probably close to 100. It's going to be very challenging, and I would say don't waste your time and try and show up for Toyota Corolla, but try and show up for some of these other searches that you guys can win at. So using another example, Ford F-150 Seattle. This is using the same program, Open Site Explorer, but using it in a different way. And so if you look here, Ford F-150 Seattle, there's a dealer that shows up number 1, Sound Ford. There's a dealer that shows up number 2, Scar Ford in Auburn. Now you might be at the dealership and say, why does this happen? Why does this one particular dealer show up and not the other? And this will show you some of the things that Google uses to rank people. It's like spying on your competition. So go to Open Site Explorer, type in the 2 URLs, and you can compare them. They'll tell you, what do they think about this URL? What do they think about this URL? And they'll tell you all kinds of things that Yahoo's going to go into about how many links they have to this website, how much anchor text is related to it. But you can start to get a picture from the outside of what did this other dealer do, or this other company do to show up for this search, and what do I need to do to be able to rank for that also? So instead of just guessing or spending money with an SEO company or hoping that you can do it in-house or buying a new website, there's places that we can really go use some tools and harness some of this data. And that's what I'm trying to show you guys is, instead of just guessing at some of this, there's places that we can go and find out, what did this person do, how did they do it, and what do I need to do to be able to do the same things myself? So, action items. Study who ranks, find out how hard it's going to be. And then, this is a really fun one, segmenting your shoppers. There's companies that are absolutely awesome at this, and whether you like the politics of the Obama administration or not, anytime that you read about customer segmentation, you'll find articles about what they did in the re-election campaign. They were very good at using different taglines and emails and finding out what people would open. If you made an email negative, did Nick open it? If you made it positive, did Nick open it? Okay, we need to start using all positive messages with Nick. We're going to use all negative messages with this person. You can break up people into different categories. And you can try different things on your website if you get good at segmenting them. So you don't say, I built this content and I got more leads, but I don't know exactly where the leads came from. And I think sometimes people struggle with this, setting up goals in their analytics. And it's a really simple concept once somebody explains it to you, and that's what I want to show you. It's just kind of how this works. So let's say we built content for two different things. I built some stuff for a C7 Corvette, and I built some stuff for a Corvette Stingray. They're both searches that we know people might be looking for. Which one converts better? If I got equal traffic between the two, I would get leads that showed up on my website if I had some kind of form level tracking, but I wouldn't know which one converted better. What's interesting about this search is, if I'm looking for a C7 Corvette, that's a 2014. There's no other thing that a C7 Corvette could be. But if I'm looking for a Corvette Stingray, I might be interested in a 2014 Corvette, but I also just might be interested in classic cars. I might be looking for a part for a restoration project. So you might be getting traffic that's coming to your site that's not necessarily converting. And what setting a goal in Google Analytics allows you to do is segment that traffic and figure out what terms people are using, what pages they're using, and then what we're getting as a response rate. And here's how that's done, because this is the part I think people struggle with, and it's actually really straightforward. If you have submitted a lead on a website, your own website, or even bought anything at a store, you'll oftentimes see a page like this, a thank you page. And the reason why these exist is you want to have some unique URL that people can only get to after they've done what you want. So as dealers, what we want the person to do is to fill out a lead form. Great. So I've got a unique URL. The only way that you get this URL is if you go to this page and fill out a lead. Now all I need is a second thank you form that's different with a different URL to put on this page. And now I can compare the two and say, how many times did this URL get displayed? 10. How many times did this one get displayed? 5. So regardless of how many people came to the site, I can see which actual form or which page that I built was a better endeavor, and I have limited time because I work at a dealership. Which one do I want to focus my energy on? Which one do I want to focus my money on? So to actually do it, since I promised you guys I would show you how to do all of these things, if you were to send the email to the seminar at PGI Auto, there's a link to this video. It will tell you step by step exactly what you have to do. But all you need to do, if you're using one of our website platforms, is actually we put the URL in there and we put the link to your Google Analytics. So you have to make like 3 clicks, and you could set this up for any form that you're building. If you're not using a website platform, just send the email, hit the video. You can see how to do it on your own. Very, very straightforward. So that's segmenting people by form submission. I don't know if this video will play. Let's see here. Looks like it did. Let's see if it'll play a second time. I'll walk you through it this time. Okay, so this is a car on Craigslist. My mouse is hovering over the link to the dealer's website. And what we're going to try and do is segment our traffic, not just by form submission, but we were talking about dynamic phone numbers. So this is segmenting our traffic by phone calls, because we know a lot of people come to our site, they don't submit a lead, form conversion is pretty low, but a lot of people call. Well, what sources are sending people to my website that make people pick up the phone? Since the guy from Auto Trader is telling you, I sent a ton of people to your website, and they're probably calling you and probably coming in, which is probably true. But so did Craigslist, and so did Cars.com, and so did this other vendor. So I can look with something like dynamic phone numbers, and I'll show you how this works, and say, if the referring domain was Craigslist, display this phone number. If the last site that the person visited before they showed up on my website was Auto Trader, I want you to display this phone number. And so now I can see, based on where they started before, I started on Auto Trader, I landed on your website, I call you, I can see how many calls I got generated from Auto Trader. And because shopping is not linear, like people don't always go to Craigslist and then go to your website and then call you. Sometimes they go to Craigslist and then go to your website and then go to ESPN and check on the Mariners game and then go back to your website and submit a lead or make a phone call. It cookies the person and stays with them. So if I've gone across multiple different sites, you can see the original one that brought you the traffic. And so here's how it actually looks on some of these websites. So here's the ad on Craigslist. I click on the ad, I get delivered to the dealer site, and right now, you can see the phone number. This is kind of slowed down, but it happens really quickly. The phone number is 503-715-0609. Now, as the page loads, it's going to switch that phone number to a 1-800 number. And that's allowing me to say, anyone that calls from this number from Craigslist, they get the credit. If they came from Auto Trader, they would get a different phone number and be able to track that differently. So a great way to segment not just your form submission, but also your phone calls. So dynamic phone numbers, if you guys aren't using them, great tool for it. So what can you do? From this section, create 2 different pages, start to test them, have a different thank you URL, get it set up as a goal in your Google Analytics. Even if you just do it to learn, it's very easy. It'll give you a lot of knowledge as you start to do something like a particular campaign. If you have a website that maybe doesn't give you form level detail, and you're going to do a special mailer or a special event or a sign up, you're going to be able to at least set a goal in your Google Analytics and be able to track that if you start to master this. Okay, last thing I'm going to go over here, and this will be pretty quick. Just something that is brand new. This company called Moz puts together a study every year and says, what are the things that make a website rank? And I'll tell you how they do this because it's pretty interesting. If you were a professional SEO person and you wanted to figure out what is the strategy that Google uses to rank pages, they don't tell you, right? It's a secret. So they set up these different experiments and pick a word that's nonsense, like something that's nowhere else on the internet, like a code. And then they get a URL that's the same thing, that they're not going to show for any other search other than like XYZ 7462.5. Build a URL, add a couple of pages to it, and then say, hey, if I put the link at the bottom of the page, the middle of the page, and the top of the page, and I use this other kind of independent code, something that's nowhere else on the internet, just like a random string of numbers, and I search for that, which of the pages shows? The page that the link's at the bottom, the page that the link's in the middle, or the page that the link's at the top? Whatever one shows, we've got a clue that says, oh, Google thinks this is really important, or they think this is really important. And one of the things that I see as I consult with dealers over the last year and a half is not everything is as important as other things. So you'll have a vendor that comes in and says, you know, social media is very important for your SEO strategy. Well, it's a part of your SEO strategy, but it's not all of it. Or creating content is very important. Yes, that's true, but there's other things that matter. And so this is specific to local searches, and a great resource for you guys just to be able to look at your own efforts and say, as I lay out my marketing plan or I try and work on my website, where are areas that I should consider focusing my energy? So local ranking is a little bit different because it's showing you those long tail searches, and most of the searches that we want to show for as dealers are actually local searches. So the number one thing that makes a difference in how well your website shows is your Google Places page. So it's not your website vendor, it's not do I have social media, it's not do I have video, it's do you have a Google Places page that's set up that has some consistency. The next one here, NAP consistency, name, address, phone number is what that stands for. What Google looks at, they want to show trustworthy sites. So they say, if I show up on your website and I see one phone number, and then I look in the yellow pages and I see another phone number, and then I see this other address, I'm not really sure if you're really in this town. Or I have dealers that say, like, I'm in Tacoma and I really want to show up in Yakima. And they said, like, you guys kind of suck because you can't do that. Well, it's not just your vendor. There's certain rules to the way that this works, and you can look at this chart and say, what are the things that really make a difference? If my name, address, and phone number don't match up, or my geolocation doesn't match up with the search, it's going to be very challenging to index. So I try and give you the guys this as data that you can use so you're making smart decisions as you embark on some of these things. On-page signals. Yago's going to talk a lot about this. Link signals, I'm sure Yago will talk about. And then it goes to reviews. So while reviews are important, it's not the number one factor. While social signals are important, it's not the number one factor. So just be using this chart as kind of a guideline and say, where can I focus my energy, get the most return on what I'm going to do, and be smart about how I engage in that. Again, because we have limited time, limited resources, I want to get some results as a vendor. I want to get results for you guys. If you're doing it yourselves, you want to be able to show your team that you got more leads, your boss. But these are some tools that you guys can use to actually be smart about what you're doing as you're spending the time doing. So that's what I wanted to go over today. Thank you guys very, very much for listening.